Hi Year 6, this is your lesson, maths lesson for Tuesday the 23rd of February. Now in yesterday's lesson, the second link in the description was to this website. This is a brilliant website, BBC Bite Size, fantastic things on here, and this is particularly good for the lesson that we thought about yesterday and today. So if you could make sure you've watched this please. So if you click on this website, it's represent and calculate ratio, BBC Bite Size, but the link was in the description for yesterday's lesson. But if you scroll down, this video here is a particularly good video that really explains the difference between ratio and proportion really well, links it to fractions, and there's another really good video here, okay? There are activities if you wanted to do those, but I wouldn't worry too much about those because we're going to give you the activities, but please watch those videos before today's lesson. Okay, they're really helpful, Year 6, they're only short. So Year 6, we're thinking about being able to represent and calculate ratio, just like it said in the BBC Bite Size video. And such a useful video because it tells you that fractions or proportion is how the part relates to the whole. So for example, 5/8, 5 out of a possible 8. Whereas ratio is how the part relates to the other parts. And you show it with a colon like this. So that same ratio would be 5:3, because then the total of that would be 8. And as I said to you just now, watch that brilliant video and it explains it really well. So your activity for today, we've got a sheet here that we're going to be looking at. It's got some different ratios here and it's asked you to write it as a proportion and as a ratio. So let's have a look at this first one here, these beads here. They've got them as pink and green and they want the ratio of round to square. So you've got to be really careful to write it correctly. So I've got it over here and actually there's 3. If I write it as, so they want it as a proportion first of all. So if I'm thinking of my square beads here, so I've actually got, well, let's have a look. No, they've done it as round beads over here. So they've got 5 to 8. So they've got their round beads as 5 out of 8 because it's a ratio of round to square. So then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 round beads to 3 square beads. And I've shown the same thing here. So here, if I was thinking about the blue, so the blue over here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue out of a possible 8. But my ratio of blue to red is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue to 3 red. Okay, so this is my proportion, my fraction out of a whole, and this is my ratio. And as long as you look what they're asking you to write it to, so they're asking for the ratio of round to square. Okay, so that'd be my number 1 here. So let's have a look at number 2. Shall I move this over or can we see this okay here? Okay, so we're looking at round to square. Okay, so let's have a look. I've got 2 round. So I'll do my proportion first out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that right? Let's just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2 out of 9 is my proportion here. But now they want the ratio of round to square. So I've got 2 round. How many square? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's what you're being asked to do on the top bit here. Okay, so it's a little bit more tricky. You've got to think a bit more carefully. But actually, the actual maths involved is only counting, really. Now, the bottom part of the sheet is a little bit more tricky. So let's move these out of the way. Let's move, I think I'm going to move this sheet up here, just so you can see it carefully. So this is a little bit more tricky. Okay, if the ratio of red to yellow tiles is 4 to 5, how many of each set would be red? Okay, so every time I have 4 red tiles, I need to have 5 yellow tiles. So what if I had 9 tiles all together? Well, that's luckily the one they've showed in the example. I would have 4 red, 5 yellow. How about if I've got 18 tiles though? So I need to work this out, so let's have a think. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 red, every time I have 4 red, I need to have 5 yellow. Okay, so what if I have another 4 red? I'd need to have another 5. Yellow. So how many have I got now? Let's have a look. Well, I've got 10, I've got 18. So actually, how many red do I need? If there's 18 tiles, how many are red? Well, actually 8 of them are red. And luckily that's just a doubling exercise there. Okay. These ones are a bit more of a challenge. I don't want to do it for you. I want you to have a think. So every time I have 4 red, I need 5 yellow. So when the total was 18, I had 8 red. What if the total became 90? So a little bit more of a challenge for you there. Okay, good luck.
Okay, Year 6. So just as when we were talking about fractions, and I think those of you who've been in my groups, I've always said whenever you're doing the fractions, you should always try to simplify the fraction wherever possible for your final answer. Well, the same really applies with ratio. So if you imagine, if we just had a look at this question here, number 1, it's asking you to simplify the ratios where possible using whole numbers only. So this really is exactly the same as when you're simplifying a fraction. So if my ratio, let's say it is, I don't know, blue beads to red beads. So the ratio of blue beads to red beads is 8 to 12, okay? Now, just like if you had that as a fraction, say 8/12 or something like that, and you need to write it in its simplest form, this is what we do with the ratio. So you look at your 8, I've got 8 blue beads and I've got 12 red beads. Now, can you think of a times table that has 8 and 12 as multiples? Well, hopefully you'll know it's the 4 times table. So again, you're going to divide your 8 by 4. Okay, I'm going to divide that by 4. And I'm going to divide the 12 by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So the ratio is the same. It's like writing a sort of an equivalent ratio, really. The ratio is the same. 2 to 3 would be the same ratio as 8 to 12, but I've just written it in its simplest form, okay? So it is literally exactly the same as when you're simplifying a fraction. Now sometimes it might not be possible. There will be some here, because remember it says using whole numbers only. We don't want to start going into decimals and fractions at all. You just have a look at them, think, right, do I recognise those as multiples of a certain number? Okay, hopefully a lot of these you will. And remember, always try and take it to its simplest form. If I go back to this one, 8 to 12, a ratio of 8 to 12. All right, you might have said, oh, they're both in the 2 times table, so I'm going to divide by 2, which is fine. You are right. Divide by 2. Let's take that down. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay, now that, I haven't simplified it quite far enough, because again, they're both multiples of 2. So I could divide by 2, divide by 2. So what I'm saying is it doesn't matter if you do it in stages, but try and, you'll save yourself time if you go for the higher number. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. See, I've ended up with the same final answer but I just took more steps to get to it for this one. That doesn't matter at all, but always try to simplify it as much as possible. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say today, because I think the middle part was quite tricky, and you've got lots of videos to watch as well. So good luck with this, and we'll see you tomorrow.